So I'm still going a little too easy on myself, so we're going to go a little harder with this. So I'm thinking about this problem, new system, how we live as people. Um, I need to get into the things about this that are complicated, that are challenging. I'm talking too much about things I understand and know. I need to get at the fringes and what I'm seeing and discovering as I'm thinking, not. So I don't typically like being around people a lot. I'm a sort of, what's the term for it? Introvert. I'm an introvert. The concept of talking with and dealing with people is very unappealing to me most of the time. I want to be left alone because there's so much. At night, when I'm, sort of by myself and it's 3 a.m, I can feel how quiet everything is around me, because the way I view the world and the way I look at everything, like I can see my neighbors in their houses. Not literally, like I'm not trying to say I have a superpower and I'm X-Men or anything like that. It's just my brain understands systems. So if I live on a street, I see the system of the street and the people that live in it, and it's almost like I can hear them living. It's almost like I can feel them having their conversations and making their dinner, and it's like there's so much noise that it just feels like it's overwhelming a lot of the time. So when it's 3 a.m. and I can feel everybody's asleep, like I just feel this sort of like peace and quiet. So thinking about this not problem, this better answer that I'm trying to come up with. There's points where when I'm thinking about it, I look at my neighbors' houses. I'm in the backyard right now. That's why I'm sort of walking around carrying this thing, because I notice this feeling, and it doesn't matter. The problem I'm trying to figure out is, how do I even phrase it? Like, I don't even know how to phrase it. When you have a family member or someone that you love and care about, and you care about what happens to them, if something bad happens to them, you have this genuine feeling of wanting to help and wanting to do something because you want them to succeed and you want their life to be good and you want them to be happy. So you have this feeling that's different from when you see a total stranger, and the amount that you're willing to invest in what happens to the stranger versus the amount you're willing to invest in the person has the familial tie is different. And why that is because they're family versus why they're not family. That's actually not the important one. I'm talking about is the difference of the actual feeling itself. It feels different internally. It feels different on the inside. So when I'm thinking of this better answer, and I'm getting these more sort of like where I'm on the edge of stuff that I understand, but I feel like I'm getting closer and closer to the right questions. Like, I'm looking at my neighbors' houses now, and all my neighbors look like my family. Right? So I want to almost like lean over the fence and say, hey, what are you doing? Hey, what's going on? Hey, how's your life and everything? Because I feel like suddenly now, rather than them being noise and them being an irritant along with the ice cream truck, now they're my immediate family members that I love and care about. And that's important, because what I'm trying to figure out is, how do you, if you have the better answer for how we should live and how we should function as a society, I think one of the either prerequisites or one of the consequences is going to be that is how more people start to feel about all the other people around them. Because part of, if you're, just go slow. So, you have Pareto distribution. That means there are going to be a few at the top that have most and a few at the top that do most of the work. Right? So you have to find a way that the people at the top want to utilize their resource to help the people that are not the ones at the top. And it has to be an intrinsic motivation, right? They have to want to do it. They have to feel that sort of like bond of family. They have to feel that. So whether that's a consequence or a prerequisite, I don't know for sure yet. But I know that feeling is going to be involved somewhere. So part of why thinking of systems like this or a way that we should live as a society is a problem is because if you try to explain to a rich person or why they should care about a poor person, or if you try to explain to a productive person why they should care about a lazy person, they don't have that sort of innate, intrinsic feeling of, no, this is important, no, this matters to me, and this is an important thing. So their sort of concept is, I can go on living my life without that person ever being successful, without that person ever having money, and what impact does that have on me? And it's like, that's a fair question, honestly. It really is, because there's so many of us that not enough of us are going to die from being poor or layabouts that we're not going to, still be able to make shoes and clothes and automobiles. And you may think that's a heartless view at the thing, but that doesn't matter whether or not it's heartless. That's fact. That's true. There are enough of us that it doesn't matter, honestly, if half of us die. The rest of us will continue to go on. So just saying they need to feel that is not important. What you need is you need for them to feel like those people are their family and they want them to succeed, and it's part of it. So part of what I'm trying to is going to be longer because, like I said, I'm at the edge of what I'm understanding here, and I'm trying to answer a question that I haven't even heard asked. So I'm going to stammer because I'm still trying to find the question too. Free market economics. So something I was thinking about is, if you're going to have a new system that's going to have potentially a different system of economics, how are you going to replace the current system of economics we have right now? And that's actually really, really challenging, more challenging even than you think, honestly. I think because part of why our current economic system works so well is because it actually leverages aspects of the nature of evolution itself. So what I mean by that, our whole free market economy is set up on competition, winners and losers, which, again, you may think that's heartless, but that doesn't matter, and that's not the point. The point is that our entire evolutionary biology has been predicated on winners and losers. So the whole system continues to function, and it continues to function well because it's leveraging a system that we've utilized for eons. Try to find a better one, have the better one rise to the top, the better one gets slow or lazy and does something cocky, but all the other things have learned and integrated from being bred into that thing. They figure out a new way to take it out, they come to the top. Like, the free market economy is utilizing evolution. So part of what that means is strong things are going to rise to the top, but it also means weak things are going to die. And what you're trying to figure out is how to not make the weak things die. That's kind of a problem because that's not something we've ever really done to that extent. It's not something that you've ever seen exist in any aspect of the universe. Massive, and this got me into thinking about mass and matter, because matter isn't ever created or destroyed. Matter is transferred and transformed. So if you have a smaller planet and it ends up going into the orbit of a larger planet, it ends up crashing into the planet and they turn to asteroids or whatever the case may be. But the point is that the stuff doesn't actually go anywhere, the matter that made it up, but the planet itself may die. Right? So if what you're trying to figure out is how to sort of, in essence, have planets collide but not have the planets die, that's kind of what you're trying to figure out. And the universe hasn't done that, so that's not easy. Trying to find a cheap quick shot answer to that, like saying, no, we just need to take care of the poor people. It's like, you're going to kill people if you're trying to approach it that simply, because it's not that simple. It's not that simple at all. You have to actually utilize the mechanics and physics of nature in order to be able to do this stuff. Right? So you have to actually figure out how the universe works, which is part of why, like I said, free market economy works so well, because it's actually leveraging how life has functioned forever. But going back to that feeling that I was talking about, that for a few seconds there, I felt like the person who's on the other side of the fence, who I actually don't like for a few reasons, but I had this feeling of, they're my sibling, and not just my sibling, they are my loved and cherished family member. And that's part of why that happens, is because I have an understanding of how the world works in regard to what I was saying about, there has to be somebody making the goddamn potatoes. Everybody that's producing for society has value to society. So they have value in terms of who you are, and part of why you can live your life is because the person on the other side of the fence is doing what they're supposed to be doing, right? There's this whole big system that sort of functions that way. So, what's up, buddy? So, figuring out how to get a system that you can instill like that. Because that's the feeling, I think. I'm not sure it's going to be a consequence. I mean, I think it'll be a self-reinforcing consequence afterward, but I think it also has to be a prerequisite to convincing people to do whatever the system is. Like I was talking about, you can't just talk about the nuance of the idea. You have to have the distilled idea, and you have to be able to tell it in a way that people are going to see it and they're going to understand and agree with it. So, let's take something like, it's all right, Pris. So let's take something like, let's say you're a person. You're a singular person, right? Going back to the matter's not created or destroyed, it's transferred and transformed. You're a single person, just one person living out in the middle of nowhere. You got a farm. Now you're farming food. You're going to take that food and you're going to eat that food. And that food's going to, that matter that you ingested, right, is going to enter your body and it's going to transform and become energy. And it's going to become waste. Right, so your body's going to take a bunch of that stuff and it's going to convert it into energy that your body requires and substance that your body requires to function. And the rest that it can't process or doesn't want to process for one reason or another, it's going to be converted into waste and it's going to pass through your body. But if you're smart about how you handle that, you can actually utilize the waste to perform good things around the farm and around your single life. So, for example, you can take the feces and you actually have the feces fertilize the food, and the food is the stuff you eat that turns blah, 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 blah. You can use the urine, if you wanted to, as a disinfectant of a sort if it was necessary, and there are other things you could do with it. But I mean, the point of it is that the energy itself, the matter itself, isn't really ever destroyed. It's simply converted. But if you're going to operate to maximum capacity, you're going to figure out a way to take that waste and convert it into something that's not waste. So, that goes back to, you know, the rich people and the poor people, successful and not successful. Because what you want to do, I think, is you want to take your shit and you want to turn it into fertilizer. I think that's what you want to figure out how to do. But the problem with that is that in order to properly, effectively survive, you don't have to do that. You can just shit in a river, right? So, what's it get for them? And that's sort of what I'm trying to figure out. So, if I can get that feeling, and I can have that feeling instilled in me in some form or fashion about, you know, feeling like they're my family, and I can actually, like, like when I was feeling that, I was feeling it like at my core, like I had this elation of sort of spirit looking at all the houses around me and thinking of all the people and how we're all working together to make this beautiful, magnificent machine, but not everybody thinks like that. And especially if you're going to have to take resources that you're producing, because you're one of the top producers, and that's how Pareto distribution functions. Press! 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 Press, come here. Come here. Come here. Come here. Come on. Kid, come here. Come on. Inside. 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 Come on. Sorry, they gotta go inside. They got to right now. I can't think of them doing that. Hey, buddy. Hey, buddy. That's the kid. Say hi, buddy. Hey, kid. What are you showing me that? And there's Sunshine. And there's Chris. Okay, get inside. Inside. Inside, buddy. There you go. Good puppies. So I think if you figure out the right answer, you're going to figure out how to, that feeling will unlock in somebody, potentially, or you have the capability to at least unlock that feeling in somebody. So think of it like this. If you're in a family and you are raised to love and treat your family like they're the ones that are always there for you, and whenever you need somebody, your family is there for you and they help you. Right? It gives you this feeling of responsibility, but not necessarily responsibility like a weight. It can feel like it's responsibility like a weight, depending on what your upbringing is. But if your upbringing is of I'm going to say better and more just and virtuous manner, then helping someone that you care about doesn't feel like a burden, it feels like a gift. So we have to figure out how to actually make the people that are useless be converted into potential gifts. And it's not just people that are useless, right? There are also people that are being useful inside of there, but they aren't necessarily being utilized to their potential and not in a way that actually makes them happy and fulfilled. So if you have a family member that's doing something and they're making a lot of money doing it, but when you talk to them, you can tell that they're unhappy and they don't like their life, then you might want to give them advice like, hey, I know you make a lot of money doing this, but maybe you should find what actually makes you feel like you're alive, and maybe you should go after that. That feeling of responsibility, I think, can be taught in a person depending on what their family upbringing is. And I think if you find the right sort of ways to unlock that feeling in an individual, you can unlock it, but you have to actually be providing them something that provides them value, that they interpret provides them value. So before you even can get into any of that, part of what you have to understand is the production problem. So production, by what I mean by that is food, clothing, shelter, utilities, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think there was a critical error that Marx made when he was talking about the proletariat and the bourgeoisie, where he was thinking the proletariat just need to rise up and destroy the bourgeoisie. It's like, no, you can't do that. You can't do that. You need the people that are actually the production magnets. That's why all the people starved in the Ukraine, right? Because they killed all the kulaks, because they killed all the people that were actually production. So any idea you come up with like this, where you're trying to figure out how to unlock people's intrinsic motivation and be able to find what allows them to become the best idealized versions of themselves, the production has to be at minimum enough to maintain everybody being able to live a standard of living and support the people that are the top producers having more than the people that are not the top producers, because again, you want to reward the people that are the top producers. So it's really important to understand that, because like I said, this is the critical error Marx made. He didn't understand that production was the prerequisite. You have to have enough production. You have to. You can't do any of this shit unless you're making enough food to feed everybody. If you're not making enough food to feed everybody, none of the rest of this shit matters. So that has to come first. That has to be the preeminent. But the question is, how do you do that in a way where people aren't consigned to working in slave labor camps effectively, which is what the gulags were, that they aren't just sitting there dying, that they don't feel like they're enslaved, that they feel like rather they're actually providing a service, and it is a time that they're providing to society while they're also finding what their personalized identity is. I don't hate him for the hammering, by the way. I hate him for the trees. I'll show you real quick. You see those trees by the fences? You see how they're all cut off the top? It's because the leaves were getting in his pool. Motherfucker. I understand why. It doesn't matter. I get why you made that up. So the production, you have to have enough production. So if you don't have enough production that you're feeding and clothing and giving everybody the sort of amenities that they want, the rest of your system doesn't matter. It doesn't. You need to be producing enough. And if you need to be producing enough, how do you figure out something that produces better than the free market when that's something that already leverages our biological imperatives of dominance, extinction? Because that system works so well because we've been perfecting it for like 1 billion years, man. So if the universe is infinite, is expanding at an effectively infinite rate, the theory at some point is that at some point it's going to reverse and collapse on itself. I don't know how that functions in with terms of infinity, but I'm not a physicist or I'm not an astrophysicist, so I don't know. But I think part of what you want to do part of what you want to do is figure out how. So sustainability. If you're trying to, if you're focusing on your number one thing being making the system sustainable, so that the rich get to be rich and the poor don't have to be super poor, it's like, yeah, you can focus on the sustainability as your number one concern. You can do that, but the problem with that, I think, is that if something's not focused on sustainability, if they're focused on being ravenous, they will destroy something that's focused on being sustainable, right? That's part of why, the Europeans were so advanced in terms of firearms, resistance to disease, and part of why, the Native Americans got wiped out by the Europeans was because of disease and because we had firearms and because we had different tactics and we had different ways of understanding supply lines. And, if you just try to focus on sustainability, like there are creatures that we've discovered that are at the bottom of the ocean, and any of these facts could be wrong. The particulars of the facts aren't the point. It's the idea that's the point. But I think I'm remembering this properly. We have creatures that are at the bottom of the ocean that, from what we can tell, effectively they're almost immortal. And it's like, that's really good. But the thing is if we wanted to, we could go kill all of them. Right? So you need to actually not just focus on sustainability. You need to have sustainability that's like a ravenous sustainability almost. You need to be able to maintain that level of peace through strength, basically. You need to have peace through strength. So pursuit of strength needs to be one of your primary hallmarks, but for the specific purpose of maintaining and enforcing peace. So what I mean is that we can't just be focused on how do we make this a cycle where we're not necessarily worried about growth. We have to have a cycle that is, how do we grow, but how do we have growth in a way that's not wastefully inefficient, and not wastefully inefficient that when people are involved on it, they feel proud of it. So again, take that person that's, living in the middle of the forest or middle of nowhere by themselves, and they have the farm and they're utilizing their shit to fertilize their crops, right? You could have different kinds of people in that scenario. So you could have one person that is actually sort of proud, and when they look at all this stuff that they've built and everything that their hands have wrought, they feel like this swell of pride and they feel good. And then you can have another person that's inside that scenario that feels like, oh, this is so arduous and this is such drudgery. And it's all a question of perception, how you're actually perceiving it, because the reality is the same between the two people other than the individual involved in their perception. But the thing is can you unlock the feeling that the first person has, a feeling that's swell of pride, and figure out how to take the second person and come up with a version of what the first person does that translates to the second person so they start feeling the swell of pride. See, what you need is almost like a universal key to understanding how to get people to feel like that, and specifically how to get people to feel like that about the rest of the people on the planet, so they aren't just viewing the people that aren't productive as them as wasteful. They're looking at the people that aren't productive as them as investments, as family, as like, that's someone I care about and I want them to succeed, and here's what we should do to try to ensure that they can succeed. And there's a really important distinction about what that means, because it's not just you want to support them to try to backpack across Europe and find themselves, so that may potentially be a perfectly fine tactic, I don't know. But what I mean is the actual goal of what you want for them is for them to actually figure out how to be fulfilled, how to actually feel like they love their life and they feel like they matter. And I think an integral component of that is figuring out how you actually contribute to the world around you, and seeing how all this that exists around you exists in part because you are doing what you do, no matter how big, no matter how small, because that is true, but it's really hard to see that. So figuring out how to, what I mean is that's the thing you want to point them toward, not that just they pursue their joy, find their passion, but pursue their joy and find their passion, because their joy and passion is going to involve actually doing something meaningful for the rest of the world, whether it's designing refrigerators or coming up with the concept in the first place, to literally just sewing shoelaces by hand. Like, they all matter, but as long as you can actually see that it matters and see how it matters to everything else, and everybody that walks by, you look at their shoes and see the shoelaces and think, I did that, then you can get everybody sort of going. So what I mean is you have to figure out how to, the way you're wanting to unlock people, the goal is that when they are walking around, they're looking at the shoelaces and they're feeling that swell of pride about it, that I made those, and because of that, that person's going on to do X, Y, and Z, and all this big machine. That's my brother over there, that's my sister, and they're wearing the shoelaces I made, and that's how they're actually going to their lab and they're curing cancer. And you need to feel that, and you need to figure out how to architect that in people, and you need to find the thing that speaks to them, that sort of like sings to their soul, right? That does allow them to do something that does actually manifest a benefit to the rest of humanity around them, no matter how big, no matter how small, because we need all of the big and all of the small. So, and also at the same time, figuring out how to do that in a way that you reduce the amount of wasted people that we have, that you reduce the amount of suffering that we have. And, that's something that, like, I can't even remember who, but I've heard multiple people say, like, don't worry about being happy. That's a pointless goal. Worry about being productive. It's like, no, fuck you. You have no idea what you're talking about. Them being happy is part of them being productive. And I guess that's unfair because I don't necessarily know what they're saying. Maybe they're saying pursuing productivity is how you're going to find your happiness, which is necessarily untrue. That's not necessarily inaccurate. But pursuing your happiness is a fundamental goal, but you have to have your happiness and your productiveness, and they're intertwined with one another. They can't be really separated, honestly. Not really. Because anybody that's actually like super fulfilled with their life that I've ever run into is super fulfilled with their life and also doing something that is contributing to the world, that they're proud of what they do, no matter how big, no matter how small. So I think that's the thing you have to figure out. So if you're going to, so you got a few different problems here. So one, you have the production problem. How do you actually produce enough resources and enough amenities if you're trying to allow people to sort of find their center and find their dream and find their place in this world, while simultaneously somehow still producing enough, which is potentially going to require them to work, and do that in such a way where you're not actually utilizing them in the equivalent of a gulag and they don't feel like they're a slave. So that's one problem that you have, and that's the most important problem you have, because you have to have enough production. That's part of why fucking free market economy is so fucking brilliant, because it handles all those, like it checks off all those boxes, man. But it's wasteful. So first point, you have to figure out how to maintain the production, and have to maintain the production in such a way that people, while they're doing stuff that maintains the production, they don't feel like they're trapped in doing that, and also feel like they are enabled, because they actually are enabled through other systems and devices that we have in place, to find out the thing that is more pertinent to them and what they feel their place is in the world, that they can find that while we're somehow still managing to maintain this production level. That's the number one problem. That's the first thing you have to figure out, because without that, none of the rest of this shit matters, right? If people are starving, none of your ideals matter. Sorry, Marx, right? It just doesn't work like that. People need to be eating. People need to have houses, internet, cars, water, food. So production has to come first. And you also have to figure out what the actual method is for unlocking these people like this. How you can actually get people to go through a system or a set of steps that allows them to identify whatever this thing is that's going to allow them to contribute more to the world and be happy and feel fulfilled that they're doing so, and be proud of it, and look at the person that's utilizing the fruit of their labor one way or another, see that person as their brother and their sister, and feel like, yes, I'm doing this for you, and that's why it matters, right? Like, you need to figure out how to actually like architect that and engineer that in people, because I don't think that's impossible to architect and engineer. I just think we haven't figured out how to do it adequately yet. I think we have to some extent, but I more think that's us being lucky than good a lot of the time. I think there are people that have that sort of mindset, but how do we replicate it? Go ask somebody. Go ask 100 people. You'll get 100 different answers, but what's the right answer? How do we actually do that reliably? And then you have to actually figure out how to have a version of that that relates to the producers, the people that are at the top of the hierarchy in the Pareto distribution set. What's the motivation for them that they can actually agree with and sign up for, that says, yes, this is important, we need to do this, this matters, and they feel like it actually has a meaning and importance to them. So I think those are the big three. Well, I don't necessarily know those are the final big three problems, but I think three problems I can think of in order. Number one, production. Production and not having people feel like they're slaves is part of the production. That's number one. Number two is actually figuring out the method to unlock this sense of unity, brotherhood, finding your happiness through your productive works that contribute to mankind. That's number two. And number three is the people that have already found this sort of like means that they want to be productive and they want to contribute to society, and they're doing that, figuring out what the thing is that will intrinsically motivate them to want to pay for doing the second step. I think those three things, if you can figure out those three things, you got a pretty good shot at doing all this. I think part of it, again, goes back to what I was saying before about finding, useless rich people, because again, they gotta exist, man. They gotta. And I don't mean useless rich people like let's all look down on them. That's not what I mean. I mean, those people are unhappy, and part of why they're unhappy is because they're useless. I firmly believe that. I just don't think they know that, and I don't think a lot of people understand that that's really how that works. Nothing makes you feel better, I don't think, on this planet than having someone you care about, and whether that be the society or whether it be a family member or a loved one or whoever, and doing something for them for the sole purpose of doing it for them, and not expecting to get anything in return, just seeing them improve and become better and become more useful and happy to the world around them. I don't think there's any feeling in the world that feels better than that. Maybe there is, but I don't think there is. I don't think there's a long-term sustainable option that's better than that. But how do you architect that? How do you build that into everybody, and also actually help them find the way that's going to enable their joy, especially when they've gone through, God knows what that made them as miserable as they are. How do you take these people that have everything, feel like they have nothing, and turn them into people that are now making everything for themselves because they're making something that matters to anybody, and seeing that it matters, and seeing that light sort of like tick off, in their head. How do you do that? And I think it's the rich people, man. You have to find rich people that have everything, that are unhappy, that don't know how to contribute to society and haven't figured out how to be happy, and are trying any method they can to try to find happiness. And you have to see if you can figure out how to turn those people around, and not just turn them around, man, but like, you got to get good at it. You have to get, quick turnarounds, like 5 years or less. Every time you're handed one of these people, 5 years or less, you have to figure out how to actually turn those people around so that they're happy and they feel like they have a reason to get up in the morning, and they're not faking it till they make it, like they've made it, right? They already got it. Because if you can reproduce that to that level, man, and then you just start teaching it to people when they're young, and then you say, hey, we're going to teach all these other people that, this is one of the things that we need to agree to teach all our children growing up, because we found if we take these rich people that feel like they're useless and we have them follow these steps, not only do they become more useful, more happy, more productive and beneficial for the rest of society, but they also feel like they're willing to pay to try to help other people do this because they feel it's that important. Hey, can we start teaching children this, because it seems like we're onto something here, right? So fuck, how do you do that? Who do I convince to start letting me try to socially engineer rich people? And not socially engineer them in a way like, I think smoking is bad, so we're going to raise the taxes on smoking so people stop, you lazy fuck. That's not the way you do that. God, you pieces of shit. Sorry, that's a personal example because I smoke, obviously, but it's like, that method is so fucking stupid. It's so dumb. Like, we want this to be the thing that's real, so we're going to oppress you into doing what we want. It's the, you ignorant fucking sycophant psychopath. You have no business socially engineering people because you don't have their interest at heart. Well, if they stop smoking, it's better for them. Yeah, but you're trying to take away their choice, and you're trying to make them feel bad that they aren't doing what you want them to do. That is not the way you do this, you idiot. Stop it. Fuck, man. You have to unlock them intrinsically. They have to find the reason they want to stop smoking and feel good they did, not that you made it expensive and fucking God, so worthless. I mean, not really. I guess it's not worthless because it's shown us exactly how badly to never ever fucking do that. Like, well, it hasn't shown us yet, but hopefully it's going to show us at some point. It's shown me at least, and I'm sure it's shown some people that that's not how you do it. So that's the three things we got to figure out. We got to start with some rich people. I think we got to find some rich people. Don't have a reason to get out of bed. Figure out how to give them a reason to get out of bed. Be able to reproduce it, and be able to do it in such a way that they look at the people around them and they see them like their brothers and sisters, and we figure out, hey, we have to do the same thing with these other people. Are you willing to pay to help us do it? And they're like, fuck yeah, man, let's do this. Let's make everybody like this. Like, that's what you need to do. I have no idea how to start doing that. Yeah, I have no idea how to start doing that, which is part of the problem as well, right? Because I have to worry about my family, and I have to worry about the money I'm making, and I have to worry about, feeding us and keeping the lights on. So it's like, how do I even take time to actually dedicate to doing something like this, and paying for plane trips, and like, I don't know. I guess I'm gonna have to find a way. I think I'm gonna have to find a way to do this. I just don't know who. I don't know how yet. And I don't even know what the method is that I would take about trying to go about to, identify the markers for what, I'm not talking about an easy problem here, right? So this is super fucking hard. It's easy. All we got to do is we just got to understand human nature, how to make it turn the way we want to, so provide the result that we want to, that we know is going to make them happy no matter what, and then we turn that toward everybody and have them pay for it. Ta-da! Jesus Christ, that's not easy. But it's right. It's right, though. Is it? I don't know a better answer than that. If we can figure out how to replicate this in people that have all the resources and don't need to worry about saving all their life, it also takes away the struggle, right? Because some of the theory behind why we want the market economy to work the way we want to, or why we want democracy to work the way we want to, is because there's this idea that there needs to be some level of suffering, because the suffering and the desire to escape it is part of what motivates people. And I don't think that's wrong. I think it works to an extent. I think it's wasteful and it could be better. So I don't want to throw out that system yet, because I don't know a system better than that system yet. So that people need to feel the need to hustle because they want to escape their bad circumstance. It's like, I don't like it, but there's not a better one yet. So let's not start trying to, burn down the fucking house right now. Let's wait until we're pretty sure we have a better option than that. But the thing is I do think there's a better option than that. I don't think that's necessary, specifically because, and this is why I keep going back to the rich people about this, because if you have people that have everything and they're still suffering and miserable, then the suffering isn't necessarily the thing that gets them out. And if it is the thing that gets them out, it's not the suffering at the lack of resources that gets them out. Right? That's important to understand. Because if you have miserable fucking rich people, and again, I'm sure you have plenty, resources is not the solution for that. So if you're teaching people you don't have the stuff that you want, so you have to try to struggle to get out of it so you can get the stuff you want, but it turns out getting the stuff you want isn't actually the solution to the problem. Oops, fuck, we got a problem, right? So I don't think the suffering and the need to improve your circumstance in regard to your local capacity to shelter yourself, feed yourself, invest in different stock portfolio options, pay for university, I don't think that's it. I don't think that's the suffering that actually leads you to find the solution. I think there is a suffering that leads to it, but the suffering is not having a purpose. It's not having a reason, and it's not feeling a unity of goal with the society that you're part of. I think that's the suffering, because if you look at these rich people that have all these resources, and you want to say they're not suffering because they have all this money, shut up. They're suffering just fine, I assure you. If they're suffering bad enough to kill themselves, and they do sometimes, they're suffering plenty fine, okay? So get off your high horse. But if they're suffering and they have all the resources, and the hustle to get the resources is the problem. So what is their problem? I think their problem is they don't have a reason to contribute to society. They don't have a way that they can provide something that's meaningful to the rest of everybody else, see the impact and feel the return on it when they're wearing the shoelaces from the other person, and say, hey, that's the person that made these. And they don't have that sort of tribal sense of belonging and sense of contribution. I think that's what the problem is. So I don't think having people struggle because they want to get the resources is the right answer. Again, I think it's I don't necessarily know a better answer that the thing I'm talking about is going to solve it. So let's not, again, not burn down the whole fucking house yet. But I think I'm right there. I think I'm right. So how do I get the rich people? How do I start finding rich people and architecting my life in such a manner that I can actually like figure out how to research and potentially replicate this? I have no fucking idea. But I think that might be the first thing that needs to happen. Maybe. You know, because I think no matter what about the things I'm talking about, and whether or not I'm necessarily right or wrong about any hypothesis here I've posited, I think figuring out how to take rich people that feel useless and feel lethargic and feel uninspired about life, and figuring out how to turn them into something that makes them feel contributive and like their life has meaning and purpose and they feel fulfilled. I think no matter what about any of my hypothesis up to this point, I think that in and of itself is a worthwhile goal. So we should start there and see what happens with it, and see sort of what the fruits of that are, and see if we can figure out how to optimize it, how to tune it, whether or not we can actually be successful in that pursuit at all, because all these people are so different. But they all operate with, you know, some of the same rule sets. They all live in the universe. They all have to breathe oxygen. If you think that stuff doesn't matter for what your personality is, it does. All of that's predicated on the fact that you exist. That's the whole word escaping me. That's the whole foundation of what epistemology is, right? The origin of human knowledge, the origin of all human knowledge starts with the fact that we're humans that exist in the universe. So all these things that are universal factors contribute. So I think there have to be some linking commonalities about how people function and act that we just haven't necessarily figured out yet, that are potentially some new bolts that we can figure out how to tweak to figure out how to make this successful in one of these people and make this successful in more of these people and figure out how to replicate it more and more. And man, if we can figure that out, it's like, fuck, I think we got it. I think we have the foundation of what it is that we need to do for everything else. So we leave the system as it is for right now because A, nobody's going to listen to me and burn out the whole country anyway, and nor should they, because that's dumb. But B, we don't know what a better system is yet. I need to figure out how to start finding useless, unhappy rich people. And then figure out what the fuck I'm even talking about and how I would even make them happy. Or rather, show them how to figure out how to be happy, because that shit's not easy. Like when I said you have to be able to replicate that inside of 5 years with people, that was being optimistic. Okay, well, I got to think about this more, but that's sort of where my head is at. And this is more what I need to do. I need to sit on the edges of what I'm trying to figure out. I need to be uncomfortable while I'm doing this because I feel like I don't know what I'm going to say next. That's the way to do this. And since you're going to watch this later, Robert, if you feel like you can figure this out, I'm making it your responsibility to figure it out, dude. If you think you can do this, get it done, because it fucking matters a lot.